This is Kabuto Park, and there are over 40 bugs in this charming little catching game. And in the next 26 minutes, we're going to learn a fun fact or two about every single one of them in the order that I caught them in. So, spoiler alert for what you can find in this catching simulator. But without further ado, let's begin with the first area and what cute critters can be found there. Kicking off a relaxed and fun few hours of streaming, the first bug I encountered was the Earthbor Beetle. While this common name is associated with the huge and diverse family of Geotroopidae and Bulboceratidae, the game focuses on genus Blackburnium from mostly Australia, which these pictures of various species are for. And for our first fun fact, these guys are jokingly called the sand turd beetles. Yup, and it's because of their behavior of pushing up columns of sand that form decent poop rods that'll score an easy solid 3 on the Bristol stool chart. Next up, the beautifully colored Rosemary Beetle. Although Americana is its species name, these beetles are actually found in Europe, Northern Africa, and the Middle East. However, since it's an invasive species to many areas such as UK and Israel, maybe the erroneous name might become true, but let's hope it doesn't actually happen since they are a pest to, of course, rosemary, but to also thyme and lavender as well. We're keeping the beetle train going with my next catch, the generically named Rhino Beetle. This chunky fella is quite the tank as an adult, but unfortunately, we'll have our first sad fact of the day as their larvae are parasitized by this wasp, Megascopia maculata. I can never get over how horrifying parasites and especially parasitoids are, so my condolences to this larvae. But let's move on from this gloomy fact and rise like the rainbow after a rainstorm because we caught the rainbow stag beetle. Personally, I'd prefer to see this over a leprechaun and their pot of gold, but these beetles are obviously named such because of their beautiful green and red elytra, but through selective breeding they can also come in the solid green, red, blue, and purple variant. But not only color, their thorax can be bred to be shiny and glossy like the rest of their elytra, unlike the typical matte finish.
Get much easier.
Yo, our first rare bug of this gameplay happened to be the golden heart. Although usually associated with Southeast Asia and particularly of this subspecies, there's a very rare subspecies that resides in Japan that looks nothing like the others, an excellent addition to the game. Okay, at this point in the game, we unlocked some more bugs to discover, and what better to start than with a ladybug or ladybird, although entomologists prefer lady beetles to avoid confusion with other scientifically defined true bugs. The in-game was your classic common 7-spotted septum punctata, but since it's such a large group, I'll quickly share a slideshow of my favorite designs. Oh boy, that one specifically, I love. And now, returning to the familiar format of facts, we have the crab stag. It just rolls off the tongue so well, I love its name. Named as such because of its chunky jaw-body combo and yellow coloration, which likely helps in keeping it cool from the hot sun during the day, these guys can comfortably survive a large range of temperatures, making for a great pet. But they only become sexually mature when it's hot, so pay attention to that if you're breeding. 7 beetles in a row is our current record, but unfortunately streaks must end, as next up is the Hummingbird Moth. An insanely cool example of convergent evolution. I see them occasionally in Japan, and every single time I am in awe. As I watch these guys, they watch me back with eyesight way better than mine, which doesn't really say much since I use glasses, but these insects really do have an exceptional eyesight. While the world of insects rely on smell, these moths just use their ridiculously strong vision to coordinate their complicated proboscis to slurp their next meal. They can see in 3 colors just like us, but are able to differentiate incredibly small differences in shades and have generally better eyesight than bees for finding flowers. Now, I see this bug pretty often, but I was really surprised to see it in Kabuto Park. Hoverflies are a pretty big group, but what's really cool is that many of them mimic bees and wasps, and they do a dang good job always making me initially jump, but those eyes aren't fooling me. Now, what's less known about these is that they're actually the second most important pollinators, only after bees. These guys honestly deserve the same love. Speaking of love,
okay,
praying mantises. Best known for females cannibalizing their mates after the down dirty, This fact is actually hotly debated. It seems that the rates of cannibalism is much higher in captivity due to maybe the area or the female not having enough to eat, but it's rare to observe in nature. Wild males usually avoid females when they notice that the female is hungry, so it's uncertain how natural this cannibalism is, but there's one species that never has to worry about that because the Brunner stick mantis is an all-female species. They reproduce through a special way called parthenogenesis where the egg doesn't need a sperm to develop. So these independent ladies don't need no man. There are very few species of mantis that do this, but Brunner's is the only that has been discovered to only reproduce through this method. At this point, we did some battles, including beating a boss, and we unlocked the second area, the Calm Lake, which meant more bugs. Also, if you're liking the video so far, please like and subscribe as I am sponsorless and need your support. But back to the bug facts. It feels like it's been a while since we've seen a beetle, so here's the ox. Larger males are known for their triceratops-like horns, but smaller males can have horns so small the two upper horns on their thorax are non-existent. There's not too much to say about these cute little guys, but their larvae are an agricultural pest, so let's move on to the ruddy darter. Holy cow, dragonflies are so cool. And this one is not an exception. Of course, being a dragonfly, it boasts a very impressive predation rate, but for this little guy's fun fact, we're going to focus on identifying it as it's common, but looks like other darters. The key thing to focus on with these guys is their legs. If it's all black, then we've got a ruddy darter or the spotted darter. But don't worry, it's pretty easy to tell them apart. The spotted darter are bigger and bulkier, so IDing them is not too bad. Alright, honeybees. We all love them, they've got their own movie, and we eat their honey. But did you know that in ancient times and in some parts of the world today, they're considered a delicacy? Apparently, there's a restaurant in Shanghai that deep fries and simply salts and peppers them, and it's been described as naturally sweet and tasty. Would you try these adorable creatures? Honestly, I probably would. Now, this bee is pretty special. Unlike the honeybee, these guys are solitary and as far as I'm aware, not consumed. But what's neat is that they do a pretty special kind of pollination called buzz pollination. It's an unusual technique to forcefully get pollen that's stubbornly stuck to the plant's anthers through some kind of vibration instead of their usual butt brushing pollination technique. For blue-banded bees, they specifically vibrate their flight muscles to pop that pollen out. Oh, this Cerulean Schaefer, an absolutely gorgeous beetle with a fitting name. Blue is a very rare color in nature, and in the case of this beetle, we need to zoom in to see why they're blue. Color can either come from pigmentation or by some nanostructures, and for this beetle, it's the latter. This beetle comes with nanoscales that interact with light and give it that blue iridescence. It's why if you move the beetle around, it'll look like the light is shimmering, and it's because the angle of the light hitting these scales are changing. Absolutely amazing, and very similar to the scales of this immaculate beaut of a beetle, the morphos. Ooh, and here is one of my all-time favorite beetles, Lucanus cervus. Actually made a whole video about these stags that you should check out, but the fun fact I'll leave for this video is that this species was used for the first stop motion puppet animation in frickin' 1910. It's unfortunately lost media, but many of his works are actually on YouTube. Check out Ladislav Starovich or watch my short video about him. Alrighty, another blue insect. I'm starting to think it's the developer's favorite color or something, but I want to reiterate that it's quite rare in nature. Regardless, there's two facts. One is the awesome scientific name this dragonfly has been given. Taken literally, Anax Imperator means Lord Emperor, which sounds so frickin' cool, albeit maybe a little redundant. And second, this species has the longest known mitogenome sequence of dragonflies, 16,087 base pairs, and for a comparison, we humans have got 16,569. Wow, that is close. I love orchids because of their wide variation in color, size, and whatnot, but also because of the movie adaptation, but also because they gave rise to this insane mantis. The orchid mantis has such a convincing mimicry that while it looks to an off orchid to us, and sometimes it just straight up convinces me, It has the same colors of orchids under UV, which completely fools its prey. I would chug a lot of milk to see this insect in the wild. Ooh, the monarch butterfly, one of my all-time favorite insects as a child. Best known for their beautiful colors and the great migration across the US. So let's share the less commonly known fact, which is that this butterfly is the state insect for these 7 states. Now, you might have already known that if you live in one of these, but did you know that legislative bodies tried to make this butterfly the national insect of the US in 1989, which failed, and again in 1991, which unfortunately didn't pass as well, but hey, 2025 anyone? Let's start a petition. Alright, moving on. We've got the jewel beetle, which is a pretty broad group of beetles, but the specific species named in the game looks quite different. But who cares, since both the digital and natural are incredibly gorgeous. Quite the rare species to find in the wild, as the larvae will only mature and pupate in the strictest perfect condition, and they're very patient for when that time comes, sometimes prolonging their development for even a year or 2. But because of their yellow shade and red dots, they've been called the Pikachu jewel beetle in parts of Asia. I would literally double the previous amount of milk I'd chug to see this jewel beetle in the wild.
Easy.
And some more battle progression and beating more kids to a pulp with a superior team buffed with candies, we moved on to the 3rd area, the pine forest, for some very exciting critters. The woolly chafer. This beetle is definitely on most people's top 10 cutest beetles list, and that glorious mane is not just for aesthetics. Living in the hot deserts of Africa, they spend most of their day underground to avoid the heat, but when they go out at night when the temperature drastically drops, that's when their fur coat is useful. The hair keeps them warm so they can do what woolly chafers do. Roly-poly or pill bug, potato bug, these cute little detritivores come in a myriad of names and designs, characterized by their ability to roll into a ball. They are a classic addition to any vivarium, and there are even whole hobbyist communities that exclusively breed these cute critters. Personally, the rubber ducky roly-poly is one of my favorites. Alright, next up, the Rosy maple moth looks like it would taste of cotton candy, but unfortunately it probably doesn't. As they are a saturnid moth, they don't have mouth parts to actually eat as adults, making that portion of their life strictly for reproduction. But since that's kind of a cop-out answer describing the larger group, our actual fun fact for this eye candy is that as larvae, they're pretty social and eat together, but when they reach their 4th instar, they go their separate ways. In the game, it goes by the broad name of Longicorn beetles, but the developer selected a particularly beautiful species to represent them. Rosalia alfina is quite pretty, and that bluish gray shade with black spots is actually camouflaged to blend in with the bark of the European beech tree. Because these beetles are ubiquitous and gorgeous, they're a part of the official logo of the Danube-Ippoly National Park of Hungary. Okay, it took a solid few hours to get to this point of the game, but we finally met the king of the beetles. Dynasty's Hercules, or better known as the Hercules beetle, is best known to be able to lift 850 times its own body weight, which is actually a complete myth. In fact, I dedicated a whole video to this, but no. The real fun fact, besides it looking awesome, is that its elytra can change colors depending on the humidity. And going from radically cool to a goofy cool, we've got the Giraffe Weevil with its absurdly long neck. This length is only seen in males as they're used for combat against other males. However, that's not the only use. Multi-purpose like the Swiss Army Man, the neck is also used to build nests, acquire resources, and to attract mates by swaying back and forth for a good impression. To be fair, females also have a long neck, just not as impressive. Would be cool for the developer to add both sexes into the game to show that good old sexual dimorphism, but that's understandably a lot more work, but maybe a suggestion for the future. Okay, I forgot to mention that I made a bingo card of beetles that I think would be in Kabuto Park, and while I definitely didn't expect this, I am so glad it made the cut. This is Acrius Spinosa, and it doesn't really have a common name, although leaf beetles works well. Within the genus Acrius, females have been shown to shield their eggs and care for their offspring, which is very rare among the broader group of tortoise beetles. Although not much information is known about Venosa specifically, the closely related Acrius Spinosa has been observed to have mono-a-mono combat with the sharpened tips of their elytra, and many specimens have been found with pierced elytras. Very cool to see this unorthodox shoulder beetle martial art. Commonly referred to as the lesser stag beetle, I still think he's equally cool to others. In the game, we have Dorcas parallelepipedus. Say that one 5 times fast. I have because I'm recording the voiceover, but this guy is from Europe. But another commonly referred lesser stag, which looks very similar as well, can be found in North America with the scientific name Dorcas parallelis. They're both very nice and seem like long lost twins. The developer loves blue insects because here we go again with the blue Carpenter Bee. It's an incredibly gorgeous solitary bee, but only the females get this beautiful shade of blue. Males are more muted in color to a greenish brownish shade, but they're still both remarkable. Diving beetles. I find them so fascinating, so this will be a longer one. These beetles are in the large family of Dicticidae, and despite their aquatic lifestyle, require oxygen. So the answer is to store air between their elytra and abdomen, which gives them around an estimated 30 minutes to breathe underwater. However, they've got more tricks up their elytra. I was about to say sleeve. But these beetles can also diffuse dissolved oxygen, which give them another 24 to 36 hours. The record for the longest the beetle has gone without atmospheric air is by Daranectes aube for 6 freaking weeks. That is so insane. But for the species specifically mentioned in the game, Disticus marginalis, it's one of the larger species of diving beetles, and the cool thing is that their first 2 pairs of legs have adapted to have these special suction cups, which enables them to get a secure grip on their prey as well as their mates. Also, these guys can fly and will do so when they need to locate new water sources. Although they sometimes accidentally mistaken wet roads or generally hard surfaces because it reflects moonlight, which is the criteria that beetles go off of to identify a body of water. While Hercules beetles are the king of beetles in South America, I think the Goliath beetle is undeniably the king of beetles in Africa. The particular species in the game is Regius, which means royal, actually befitting for such a king. As one of the largest insects in the world, the larvae uniquely require a lot of protein. When raised in captivity, most breeders would use cat and dog food, which, if you're a bodybuilder, would know that it's a cheat code for getting your excessive protein intake. I made a whole video dedicated to these behemoths, which you can check out in the top right corner. Even though we just talked about diving beetles, we're diving back in with the Sunburst Beetle. Beautifully aposematic with their black elytra and striking yellow dots warning predators not to mess with this beetle, they can produce a nasty milky chemical from their heads, which works really well to deter fish and other predators. But another amazing thing about this insect is that its larvae were the first ever recorded use of bifocals within animals. Now, bifocals are a special type of glasses that have 2 distinct lenses that correct for both long and short distances. The sunburst larva has 2 retinas and 2 distinct focal planes, which means that they can instantaneously switch their vision from a zoom to a close-up, so they can easily and efficiently capture their prey. These guys are absolutely incredible. Ah yes, the internet's favorite beetle, the Weevil. An incredibly large superfamily of Curculeonoidea. Sorry, I'm not gonna try that again. They are best known for their cute snoots and boots, but unfortunately that snoot we know and love is the reason why they become a major pest. Beans, rice, and unripe fruits are just examples of the Weevil's victims. They use their adorably elongated proboscis to drill small holes to then lay their eggs in. When those eggs hatch, the larvae start feasting till they emerge as adults, and the cycle repeats itself. Can't argue with extra but insignificant source of protein in my rice though. Staying on the topic of bodybuilding, our current team is jacked and loaded with steroids, I mean candy, creating an unbeatable battle tactic to defeat anyone ahead of me. I'm quickly rising through the ranks to be that very best that no one ever was, and was able to move on to the final area with the best Beetles. Of course, after spending some hard-earned cash to upgrade our boots to access that endgame area, the Crawler Swamp. Let's check out what we found there. Nearing the end of this fun fact bonanza, we finally caught the beetle this whole game is named after, and that's the Japanese rhinoceros beetle, aka the Kabuto Mushi. I have a whole video dedicated to this incredible beetle, and Beetlecast fact, it's the first video on this channel. But for Kabuto Park, I'll leave this interesting fact. The larvae of the Kabuto Mushi displays cannibalistic behaviors, but only in the first instar. When they've grown a bit more to their second and third instar, they aggregate using chemical signals. They do this because in the presence of these larvae are a symbiotic microorganism that enriches the soil quality, thus a better diet. And when many come together, it just makes the dirt a lot more nutritious. It doesn't come without drawbacks though, as another bacteria is fatal and would wipe out entire aggregations. So this balance between nutritional and infectional risk is fascinating. We've already covered the orchid mantis, but here's an even cooler flower mimic. From southern and eastern Africa, the spiny flower mantis, just like the orchid mantis, uses their camouflage aggressively as a means of ambush predation, but the spiny flower mantis doesn't always look this way. In fact, when they're nymphs, they look black until the third instar where the flower starts to show itself. Next up is another beautiful beetle, the Imperial Tortoise. Named after its ornate colors and rotund body, many Brazilian natives actually use these beetles as jewelry. The Umbrella Beetle, or Goliath Beetle, is a rhinoceros beetle from Peru and Ecuador. Named the Umbrella Beetle because of its thoracic horn covering its head like a little umbrella, these species are actually considered a pest to oil palms in Brazil for their feeding behavior damaging the palms. The Emperor Moth, aptly named as it's one of the largest insects within the United Kingdom and in fact the only member of the silk moth family Saturnidae in the UK. They are an impressively large moth that you may not see every year, as they're pretty picky about when to emerge from their silky cocoon, as they typically overwinter but sometimes even extend it to another year if the conditions aren't right. Tiny version before the actual one. Ooh, okay. Take things slow. Oh my god, I thought I messed that up. Oh my god, take things slow. What am I doing? Ah! God darn it. I get it. The next new insect we caught was the giant stag, otherwise Orcus titanus. One of the largest stag beetles in the world, these guys are found all around Asia and are a pretty popular pet because of their relatively long lifespan, but more so for their imposing large jaws and body. Unfortunately, because many titanus subspecies are imported from other countries for commercial purposes, some have escaped, whether accidental or intentional, and there has been competition with the native species of Japan, and hybridization seems to have occurred. Please don't ever release exotic species to the wild. They do a ridiculous amount of damage. But back to moths, this majestic one is the Luna moth, and I jump out of my shoes every time I see it in the US. They've got some pretty interesting defenses to deter predators. As larvae, they'd make clicking sounds to confuse echolocating bats, and as adults, those wispy tails at the end of their wings also mess with echolocation. They really don't like bats. Next up is the oak tree hopper. Outside of beetles, tree hoppers in general might be my favorite, as they've got some unmatched variety, but this particular one is very cool and pretty as well. But fun fact, they are known to protect their young nymphs. Gotta love parental care in nature. But okay, here's the, okay, wait, honey this thing. Is everything so, okay? We're not risking it. Okay, come on. Generate in a nice spot. We probably could, oh, I could have gotten it there. Okay, there we go. And it is officially Atlas. another favorite of mine, although Cauasus would take the cake because of their slightly larger body. These guys are aggressive and they've weaponized more of their body than your typical horned beetle. You need to be careful handling these beetles because the joint between their thorax and abdomen should never be touched. Their elytra is particularly sharp there, and their reflex kicks in on steroids, creating an insanely painful pinch. In fact, some people even use these guys as nature's nail clippers. They're an amazing beetle, and I've got a whole video dedicated to them. And now, but not least, is the hidden beetle that I didn't know and accidentally didn't catch on stream. But it's the Glitter Weevil Cauasus Spinosa. It's a beautiful gem of a beetle, and like the cerulean chafer or other blue insects, they've got special scales that reflect and bend light, creating that amazing shimmering blue. Interestingly, these guys emerge as adults with these little fangs to help get them out of their pupal chamber, but lose them later in life. Just like the Dracula fangs, I bought that one random Halloween. And that was all the insects in Kabuto Park at the time of writing. I hope you learned a thing or two, but it seems the developer is actively working on more updates to the game, which I'd be more than happy to make a follow-up video if necessary. I would love to see Megasoma elephas or any of the super colorful or magnificently horned dung beetles, but comment below what you'd like to see. If you haven't played this game already and don't mind that every single insect has been spoiled, I do still highly recommend playing and supporting this wonderful little game. It's media like this that's important for inspiring and bringing awareness to the amazing world of insects, and we need to treasure every single one of them. Thank you very much for those that got this far, and to those infinitely patient few that support this channel. I really appreciate it, so have a wonderful rest of your day.